boy, DL47 for all day, AM, PM, popping off as much rugby league information as possible. Right now, continuing with the first games by every team out of the series. Right now, very depressingly, we're up to the Northern Eagles. And so you don't miss any brutal rugby league information, you're watching this video in its entirety to the end as per always. This will be a marathon, at least 10 minutes, maybe even 15 or 16 or 17 minutes. So strap yourselves in, your boy all day, DL47. So, I don't want to do it, but I have to. I did say I was going to do the first game by every team ever. Northern Eagles were a team who participated in the Australian Rugby League competition for 3 years, the years 2000, 2001 and 2002. So, let me just explain why it's like so depressing in the first place. There's got to be a lot more than just the first game they played. It's actually got to be lots of information that needs to be divulged here. So, North Sydney Bears were of course one of the standalone team, of course one of the foundation teams, entering the comp in the very first year, 1998, and by 1999 they'd been in the comp over 90 years, even though they weren't very successful during that time. They spent a lot of that time rooted to the bottom of the competition ladder. Still, they were in the comp 90 years, so I thought they deserved better treatment, and Manly, of course, had been in the comp since 1947, and had been wildly successful throughout the 1960s, 70s, 80s and 90s. So, one of the most successful teams in Manly against one of the longest standing teams in North, they both deserve better. There's no way they ever should have merged and come together. It was never, ever going to work. They were doing fine standing alone as it was. And it was never going to work because they just happened to be the most, not the most, but one of the most bitterest, fiercest, acrimonious, hateful, no love lost arch rivals of them all. The Manly and North Sydney arch rivalry was probably only a tiny little bit less bitter than the Roosters Rabbitohs rivalry, which is the worst one of them all. So, Manly and North's rivalry, probably the second worst of them all. So, who on earth in their right mind thought it was ever a good idea for Manly and North for two arch enemies to merge and come together? It was never going to work, and it never did. It only lasted 3 years, 2000, 2001, 2002. And at the end of 2002, what happened was the merger dissolved, never to be seen again. Manly re-entered the competition as a standalone team the next year, 2003, and struggled a great deal in 2003 and 2004 before eventually rebuilding themselves from 2005 onwards. And they're still in the comp to this very day. But Norths, poor old North, they're gone. Vanquished. They're still trying to get back into first grade this very day, but haven't been able to do so. Other teams have gotten back in the comp, like have ended the comp since then. Gold Coast Titans entered the year 2007, Dolphins entered in 2023, Papua New Guinea are going to enter in 2028, which I'm very excited about. But poor old Norths can't get back in. And this coming from someone who hates North's guts. I'm a Manly fan, so of course I hate North's guts because we're arch rivals. And yeah, even I've got a little bit of sympathy for them, the fact that they dissolved and haven't been seen again in first grade. So, who in their right mind thought that Manly and North's merging was ever going to work? It was 3 years of misery, and that was all the only thing that ever was going to happen. So, Northern Eagles, as they were called, in the year 2000, round one, the first game they ever played. They started off with a bright start and beat Newcastle Knights 24-14 at Gosford Stadium. Newcastle, one of the heavyweights at the time, so that was a great win first up, but things didn't improve. That definitely wasn't a sign of good things to come, not at all. It was just a bright start to it. It was a honeymoon period, if you will. So eventually, for the Northern Eagles in the year 2000 season, there were 14 teams in the comp, and with their woeful defence, they won 9 games and lost 17 games from 26 games played. They scored 476 points in attack and conceded 628 in defence. So with their woeful defence, the for and against ended up minus 152 points. So of course they finished third last. Out of 14 teams, they finished 12th. And it was actually equal second last with Warriors, who also won, who also got 18 competition points. And Northern Eagles only finishing in 12th and Warriors 13th because Northern Eagles for and against was slightly better than Warriors. And the only other team to finish below Northern Eagles was Cowboys, who finished last. But even though Cowboys got the spoon, Northern Eagles season derailed in round 8 when they were funked by Cowboys. So humiliatingly funked by the team who finished dead last. So there's a lot I've got to go over, not just the first game. So the first game Northern Eagles ever played though, like I already said, they managed a great win and beat Newcastle Knights 24-14 at Gosford Stadium. Referee Steve Clark. The crowd, 20,059 people, Bulmer crowd first up. And the date, the 6th of February in the year 2000. So for the Northern Eagles, 24 points, 2 tries by Nigel Roy, 1 try by Andrew Frew and 1 try by Steve Menzies, and Jason Taylor getting 4 goals from 6 attempts, while the Newcastle Knights, Mark Hughes and Tamata Tahu 1 try each, and Andrew Johns 3 goals from 4 attempts. So, the first 7 games in the year 2000, Northern Eagles, like I had to go for us, because I was a Manly fan since 1992, since I was 4 years old, so for many years before this. And it was torturous having to go for a team that wasn't even my team, having to go for a team that was half my team. So that's why I'm going to say we, because it was my team, even though I didn't want it to be. The first 7 games of the year 2000 season, we've actually played reasonable. But like I said, in round 8, the wheels fell off against Cowboys. So, round 1, we'd beaten Newcastle 24-14 at Gosford. Round 2, we'd lost to Canberra Raiders 22-8 in Canberra. Wasn't the worst loss I've ever seen though, so I wasn't too worried. Round 3, a pretty good win over Penrith 27-16 at Brookvale. In round 4, a win over St George Illawarra Dragons 21-20 at Gosford Stadium, so pipped them by a point. In round 5, getting wobbly a little bit, I lost to Roosters 22-12 at the old SFS, so that was disappointing. But in round 6, up against one of the heavyweights in Parramatta at the old Parramatta Stadium, we led 14-10, and Parramatta only escaped with a last-minute try and last-minute sideline conversion to win that one 16-14. So I was proud of the way we played because we nearly beat one of the top teams. And then in round 7, we had a brilliant win and flogged Cronulla Sharks at 30 points to 2 at Brookvale. So the first 7 games we ever played in the year 2000, we won 4 and lost 3. We weren't going too bad, like we were going reasonable. But then, like I said, somehow, after playing reasonable for the first 7 rounds, all that did was prove that was just the honeymoon period in this miserable marriage. And in round 8, we were flogged by North Queensland Cowboys. The wooden spoon is 50 points to 10. North Queensland Cowboys 50, Northern Eagles 10 up at Townsville, up at Cowboys' home ground. Cowboys got the wooden spoon in the year 2000, and we found a way to lose to them 50-10. And when it was all downhill from there. We definitely did not recover after that. And after that, the losses came thick and fast. We were conceding 30, 40, sometimes 50 points in games. So, of course, we weren't winning many games with that pitiful defence, reserve grade standard defence. And all those 4 wins early in the season did as well. The only other thing they did was mean that in the long run, that gave us just enough competition points to, in fact, avoid the wooden spoon. If we had won those 4 games early on, we would have got the spoon. So the only thing we did have to cheer about was the fact we avoided the wooden spoon in the year 2000. So the other games we did manage to win. I don't know how, but in round 12, we managed to beat Brisbane Broncos 16-6 at Brookvale, Northern Eagles 16, Brisbane Broncos 6 at Brookvale. Round 12 in the year 2000, Brisbane Broncos were head and shoulders the best team in the year 2000, and eventually beat Roosters 14 points to 6 in the 2000 grand final. So somehow we picked the best team. In round 13, made it back-to-back wins, which was very rare for us, and beat Canberra 18-16 at Gosford. Round 17, the only away game we won all year, we beat St George Illawarra Dragons 22-12 at the old SFS, but we actually cheated. We were found to have fielded 14 players during the game, and North therefore had our 2 competition points taken away. We fought that decision and had it overturned and got the 2 points back, but it didn't make much difference. And then in round 21, a 24-12 win over Cowboys at Gosford. Well, at least we beat Cowboys this time. Yeah, but we only beat them 24-12, not 50-10 like they beat us in round 8. And in round 22, a 30 points to 22 win over the Bulldogs at Brookvale, and that was all she wrote, doing just enough to avoid the wooden spoon. And then, after finishing 12th, third last in the year 2000, in the second year 2001, we only went slightly better and finished 10th. And then in our final season 2002, we finished 9th, which sounds like an improvement, but it's definitely not an improvement at all. Because this summed up the miserable marriage perfectly to a T. First half of the 2002 season, Northern Eagles were getting the odd win here and there, enough to keep out of last place, and not being spoon contention, but losing by big margins most of the time. For the second half of the 2002 season, we actually got it together and won a few games, with 2 games left in the 2002 season. Just to sum everything up, just to sum up how miserable it was, the second last game we'd ever played in 2002, we managed to beat Warriors 18-16 at Brookvale, one of the biggest upsets anyone's ever seen. Warriors were, of course, minor premiers in the year 2002. Then, The very last game we'd ever play, the last regular season game of the year 2002, all we had to do was beat Penrith Panthers at Brookvale, and Panthers finished third last in 2002. All we had to do was beat one of the cellar dwellers, and we would have made the top 8, would have made the finals, and somehow the score ended up Penrith at 68, Northern Eagles 28 at Brookvale, in front of the disgusted home fans. The last game we would ever play as Northern Eagles, we somehow lost to the team who finished third last in that year, 68-28, and missed the finals because of it. And that just summed up the miserable merits. There you go. Northern Eagles' first ever game, plus some information before and after the merger that did need to be thrown in just to clarify everything. I did say I was going to do every team's first ever game, so I finally got that through one. Got through that one, got it out of the way. And it is at least me again. At least I've got my team back now. And although I hated North, never liked North Sydney Bears one bit. It is still tragic that they're not around anymore, that they're not in first grade anymore, because they were one of the foundation teams. Who'd been in the comp 9 decades. They deserve to keep the spot, but didn't and haven't got it back since then. So next up in the first games series is Parramatta. Parramatta's first ever game, 1947 round 1, lost to Newtown Jets 34-12, and they got the wooden spoon in their first year, 1947. Go over that one in the next video. If you're still watching, even though this video was at least 10 minutes, still watching this marathon all the way through to the end as per requested, thank you so much for not missing any pulverising rugby league information, and thank you so much, most of all, for that head-crushing, bone-splitting, pathological, gut-ripping, bowel-crushing, bone-breaking, brutal support you boy all day into your 47 Toodaloo.